and he'll have all the crazy Christmas edition of the Friday Folly stuff. Plus, you're not going to believe this story. Antifa actually attacks 2 Marines in Philadelphia, and they mistook them for white supremacists. Only problem? They were Hispanic. One of them is here to talk to us exclusively. It's shocking. But first, Washington supposedly in chaos. Well, it's happening. The House and Senate have adjourned, and now at midnight tonight, we will be in a partial government shutdown, all because the Democrats are refusing to fund the border wall. Just don't want to do it. Joining me now from Capitol Hill with all the details, working late at night. Oh, no rest for the weary. Peter Ducey. All right, Peter, what actually brought us to this point? And now, just walk us through, where do we go from here?
Laura, first of all, look at the clock. There are still 2 more hours until a quarter of the government shuts down, but most lawmakers have been gone for several hours. The Senate officially adjourned for the night in the 8 o'clock hour after leadership announced they didn't have the votes to pass a bill with $5 billion for a border wall, and they also announced that they weren't going to take any votes at all until leaders work something out with President Trump. Any changes they make to the bill would have to be approved by the House, but the House saw the writing on the wall. Nothing was coming tonight. They adjourned early as well. The last leader on the Hill tonight holding official meetings was actually the Vice President, Mike Pence, who brought Jared Kushner and Mick Mulvaney over to try to squeeze as much border wall money as possible out of Senate lawmakers. But he left about an hour ago, never indicating what the White House is offering in a deal or what they might give up. The Vice President also had to break a 47-47 tie earlier today to move to debate on the border wall money, and they did, but 47 votes is far short of the 60 needed to pass in the Senate. That vote today was kept open for hours because lawmakers needed to fly back from home, where they headed after passing a spending bill that didn't have any border wall money. And many of them are already on their way back home to their home states because leadership in the House and Senate have told everybody they'll have a 24-hour heads up before any kind of a meaningful vote on this spending bill. Laura.
Now, Peter, I hear the echo behind you. I'm half expecting tumbleweeds to start blowing through the great, beautiful Capitol Hall that you're standing in. But, I mean, when is the last time you actually saw a living, breathing human being, Peter? That's my question.
Well, other than the majority leader of the House, who's standing about 4 feet away from me, it's mostly just press.
Well, he's coming on our show. Yeah, right. Well, he's coming on with us. All right, Peter, thank you for giving us the latest on this. It is unbelievable. I mean, no compromise in sight, and a lot of members have just decided to go home for Christmas. Well, joining me now, Corey Lewandowski, Trump's former campaign manager, and Joel Rubin. Joel is the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under President Obama. It's great to see both of you. All right, Corey, I want to start with you because we've heard this buildup now for about kind of 72 hours. I mean, in earnest. The buildup, and we're going to play a little montage of the media declaring that what's happened with Mattis resigning, and we have a segment coming up on that, but Mattis resigning, the partial government shutdown, so far no wall funding, which means, of course, the end. Let's watch.
Is this the beginning of the end of what we have known as the Trump presidency? History will see this moment after the Jim Mattis resignation repudiation as perhaps the beginning of the end of this presidency as we know it.
It really is a presidency in crisis like we haven't seen.
I mean, we could have played another 4 or 5 sound bites, which I actually thought we had there, but this is the drumbeat. I mean, the Republicans are starting to abandon him. The Wall Street Journal is criticizing him. Allies are up in arms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Where does this stand now, Corey? Any issues with messaging that can be tweaked or changed to get the narrative, Trump's in charge, he's protecting the country?
Well, look, Laura, it's very simple. This president made a pledge during the campaign. I think it was his biggest pledge that he made. It received the largest amount of applause on the campaign trail, and now he has to fulfill it, which is to build the wall on the southern border. And the weak Republican leadership for the last 2 years in Congress have failed to deliver it. They asked the president not to shut down the government before the midterm elections because they were fearful it was going to hurt them in the midterms, and they promised to put the funding for the wall after the midterm elections. And once again, they failed the American people. And the president said, we've had enough. And because of your show and Jim Jordan coming on saying, fool me once, shame on me, fool me 4 times, shame on you, the president saw that and said, we can't tolerate this. And he knows if we don't get the funding for the wall now, it will never come to fruition.
Joel, how do the Democrats go to the voters in the country? We know that we spend $18 billion a year on health care for illegal immigrants. We spend billions more in public education. We're compassionate people, and that's just what we do. But the Democrats can't find $5 billion to get the border fortification going in the form of a wall, enhanced fencing, et cetera. Why are we worried about other countries' borders and not focusing on our own, Joel?
Well, Laura, we are worried about the American border, and there is over $1 billion that was already agreed to on a bipartisan basis by the Senate in a unanimous vote on Wednesday supporting border security. And I have to say, we got to remember that the applause line wasn't just about building the wall. It was that Mexico would pay for it. And now the president's asking the American people to pay for it. I don't want to pay for a border wall, and most of Americans don't.
But you're fine with paying for the $18 billion a year for health care? That's cool with you?
I think that when you have people living in this country, we need to make sure that they're not unhealthy
okay, so
walking
you're all right
around.
With that.
Okay,
so, all right.
But, I mean, the key thing here is that this border wall doesn't have the votes, and it's going to have less votes in about 2 weeks. So the votes aren't there. It's theoretical. They're not going to get the money from this Congress. They haven't for 2 years. So why are we shutting down the government for a vote that won't work in the president's favor?
Well, we deal in the realm of facts. So we have 25% of the government, non-essential employees, non-essential services are covered under the shutdown. And Corey, every time I hear non-essential, I think, well, why are these people in the government at all? Every time it's like a skeleton crew. We only need these people.
What does that mean? We don't really need you is what it means.
This is
we don't really need you, and so just stay home.
Yeah,
it's craziness.
Look, it's also such a scam. As you know, when they have these non-essential employees stay home, and many of them are very good people, and they stay home for the extra day, when the government reopens, we back pay them for all the days they didn't come to work. So it's not like we saved any money in the whole thing, right? But look, here's the thing. The American people will pay for the wall. We've seen that through the GoFundMe, which has now been running for 3 or 4 days, and they've raised, $10, $11, $12 million. The American people will pay for security. The families who've had loved ones killed by illegal immigrants coming across that border will pay for the wall. You ask the American people to pay for it. We have the money. It's a $4 trillion budget. The Cash for Clunkers program under the Obama administration was a $3 billion boondoggle to take people's cars away and just throw money in the trash. You're telling me we can't do that to protect American people?
Yeah, well, I got to say to both of you, though, I mean, again, this is from the Democrats to the Republicans. I say a pox on both parties. I think both have handled this abysmally. It is abysmal handling of a national a crisis at our southern border, humanitarian, environmental, economic, national security. I think both parties have really failed the American people here. Both of you have a wonderful holiday. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. I really appreciate your joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Big news night. And joining me now, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who apparently is the only person left on Capitol Hill, Congressman. Okay, well, here we are, Congressman. I mean, you should be, stuffing stockings at home and, hanging the mistletoe and all the fun stuff you do in California. But here we are. The government will shut down in 2 hours. Did you all wait too long?
I don't know that we waited too long if we look at the House, because the House has passed funding before, and as you know, we've had the $5 billion in there. The challenge really lies, and this is what the viewers have to understand. The House did pass a bill that protects and secures the border. The Senate, it takes 60 votes. So when it really comes to the question of shutting down, it comes to Schumer. Does Schumer make a decision to shut down or not? And this is a fundamentally different shutdown than any of those in the past, because we have already funded 3/4 of the government. So when it comes to defense, our military men and others and women, they're all taken care of in this process. But this is too important to let keep going. We know what's happening along this border. We know we need it to be secured. And think about what Schumer just said a couple weeks ago. He was for providing money for the border, but he's afraid it would affect Nancy Pelosi's vote for Speaker January 3rd. That's really what the question's about.
I got to tell you, though, back in October, you and I talked about this at the time, when Paul Ryan said, we're going to do this big fight about the border in December, we're going to have a conversation, it's going to happen. We all knew that was ridiculous, okay? I mean, you were not in that camp, but for 2 years, Paul Ryan, and everyone hears me say this, I like him very much as a person. He has not been on the president's side on this wall. He never wanted a wall. He never believed in the wall. He didn't like it. He didn't like a lot of what Trump was saying about the wall. So here we are at the 11th hour, and this is all on Trump's shoulders? I find it outrageous that it's on the president's shoulders. He's someone who actually wants this done. And I got to tell you, Mazie Hirono, I know you and she are good friends. Mazie Hirono, senator from Hawaii, on television blaming Fox News and basically talk radio. Let's watch.
He's got some right-wing, loud people yelling at him on Fox News, and suddenly he says, well, I don't think I'm going to sign it. So it is very true that he will bring on this shutdown, and he has to take responsibility for it. Any effort on his part to blame the Democrats will be such...
Well, she said the BS word there, Congressman.
She has said a lot of crazy things.
Yeah, is this a Fox News, talk radio, right-wing pundit shutdown, or did the president kind of say it's do or die here? Got to do it.
You know, the president campaigned on this. The president said he was going to fight for this all along. And this really comes down that it takes 60 votes in the Senate, but the president is doing what he promised, just like he's done across the country on everything else, from getting tax reform and others. This president is a fighter. And now, I know you might disagree with me, but Paul has been fighting for this wall as well. Maybe he didn't think at the right time, but here we are, we're in this fight. And what's changed this week, remember when Nancy Pelosi was sitting in the Oval Office? She looked at the president and said, well, you don't have the votes in the House. Well, we overwhelmingly proved that's not true. And we had sent the bill now to the Senate. So it really lies with the Senate. And the challenge there, as you watched the vote before, it comes down to what Schumer has some power, and that's unfortunate for the president, but more importantly, it's unfortunate for America. We see what's happening across this border. We need to have a secure border. It has to,
well,
but that's why I'm still at work right now.
Yeah, well, again, I beg to differ. I think Paul Ryan could have gotten the votes for that good lap bill. You came within, like, what, 13 votes of passing that, and everyone was told it wasn't going to happen. I think it could have happened, and it would have happened. But look, you're right. I mean, the Senate has the cards now. We really appreciate your spending time with us tonight, and thank you so much, Congressman McCarthy. All right, we have a lot more to get to. Coming up, the Democrats' whiplash over war policy, Friday follies with Raymond Arroyo, a brazen attack on 2 Marines by Antifa, all coming up. Stay there.
Let's finish your Christmas shop.
The anti-Trump forces in the media are pretending to be really distraught about yesterday's resignation of Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis. The sky is falling. There's chaos in Washington. The only adult has left the room. You've heard the echoes. Beware.
A political earthquake is rolling through Washington as the Trump administration sinks further into chaos.
There are no more grown-ups in the room.
And you have America, Mika, in retreat across the globe, and the most extraordinary resignation in modern American history, certainly in the past 40 years.
The Democrats on the Hill, who for 10 years were demanding our troops come home from Iraq, they now sound like they went to the Paul Wolfowitz School of Foreign Policy.
I think this will be considered one of the worst foreign policy blunders of this century, certainly of this century today.
No, who knows why the president is making this decision today. The way that he did it is totally ham-handed, and it does make the country weaker.
A decision made in a cavalier fashion in terms of our allies in the fight against terrorism, a decision that is dangerous.
I'm thoroughly confused now. Didn't they elect Obama not once but twice, in part based on his pledge to bring the troops home?
Over the last decade, we have spent $1 trillion on war at a time of rising debt and hard economic times. Now we must invest in America's greatest resource, our people. We must unleash innovation that creates new jobs and industries while living within our means. America, it is time to focus on nation building here at home.
Oh, I want to stand up. and cheer. In fact, at one point in 2011, Pelosi and other top Democrats were criticizing Obama for the slow pace of his troop withdrawal.
Many of us would like to see this go faster than the path that was laid out. However, it may. And with the proper progress, whether it's on the civilian side, on the governance side, on the anti-corruption side, it may well be that we can have a quicker drawdown.
She's very impatient for the drawdown there. But when Donald Trump is president, all the old principles of the Democrat Party, they fly out the window. Now, further, I think it's wise to focus on the substance in Mattis's letter, where he claimed, for instance, our strength as a nation is inextricably linked to the strength of our unique and comprehensive system of alliances and partnerships. While the U.S. remains the indispensable nation in the free world, we cannot protect our interests or serve that role effectively without maintaining strong alliances and showing respect to those allies. Well, before we rush to engrave those words on a tablet at Independence Hall, now let's think about Mattis's claim there. While his deep and abiding sense of public service and military heroism is inspiring, we all love that part of Mattis, the argument that America's strength is in our alliances kind of stands in contrast to what our framers believed. I reread George Washington's farewell address, believe it or not, on the plane on the way down here. And all Americans should read it, I think, at least a few times a year. It's stunningly beautiful, it's wise, it's humble, and in many ways it's prophetic. Now, Mattis is a guy who himself is steeped in military history. He knows that Washington warned against entanglements abroad that would ultimately put our nation at home at risk, and it wouldn't end up safeguarding the country's fragile independence. He said the following: "It is our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliance with any portion of the foreign world." Wow. It's hard to take that in now, right? That's what Washington said. But remember, Thomas Jefferson echoed the same sentiment in his own inaugural message. He said, "Peace, commerce, and honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none." Washington also warned us to, quote, "avoid the necessity of those overgrown military establishments, which, under any form of government, are inauspicious to liberty and which are to be rewarded as particularly hostile to Republican liberty." Of course, the point would be driven home 161 years later, after World War II and after the Korean War, by President Eisenhower. In his own farewell address, he said, "We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex." Now, I'm not here tonight to say we shouldn't work with other countries. Of course we do, and we should. And we should live up to our commitment to help our allies. But it's also the case we're not in a financial position to rev up the Team America World Police Squadrons either. And Mattis has said himself, including in his resignation missive, that we can't be the policemen of the world. Whenever we take action abroad, especially military action, it should be based on clearly defined goals with a specific and clear national security objective, which, once reached, allows for an American withdrawal from the region. The argument from so many of the Bush Republican types is, well, we can't pull our troops out because then chaos will ensue. Well, by that thinking, we'll never leave anywhere we deploy because chaos is always a possibility, especially in tumultuous places like the Middle East. My friends, Donald Trump's foreign policy is based in principled realism, not endless interventionism. We have no pressing national security interest in Syria now. We fulfilled our objective. We smashed ISIS, a success that the administration shares with General Mattis. Joining me now with reaction is David Morey. He's a former DHS special advisor under the Obama administration, and Ben Friedman, senior fellow at Defense Priorities. Great to have both of you here tonight. David, your old boss, Barack Obama, largely won the presidency on his non-interventionist message, specifically targeted at Iraq, but in general, that America cannot overextend herself, nor should we try to remake other nations in our own image. So why do you take issue then with what Trump has done here in Syria?
Well, just like President Obama wasn't exactly perfect in the withdrawal from Iraq, Afghanistan, I think this is a mistake. I agree with some of what you said, Laura. I disagree with some of what you said as well. I think it was a mistake because it's beyond contrarian in terms of we've already defeated ISIS. I mean, the majority of the national security community, inside, outside the administration, don't think that this is a good idea to withdraw 2,000 troops from Syria, that it opens up the potential for reflash. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, obviously Secretary of Defense Mathis, I believe Ambassador Jeffries, Special Envoy McGurk. You know, this is a little bit like declaring victory, landing on the aircraft carrier with Mission Impossible behind you, something that President George W. Bush
Because Foreign Policy
rethought.
magazine, whoa, a second. Like, you just look a couple of months ago, and Ben, I want to get you into this. A couple of months ago, I was reading all the headlines this morning on the way down here. And it was foreign policy successes, the Trump administration, mission accomplished against ISIS. You know, obviously, ISIS wants to try to reconstitute itself, and here, there, and everywhere. So you're never going to, like, destroy all of ISIS. But in the area where we were focused, ISIS has been driven out. Ben, I got to read something. This is Mark Thiessen's tweet earlier today. I love this tweet. And again, Thiessen, big Bush guy. He said the following. We'll put it up on the screen. He basically said here, anyone who criticized Obama's irresponsible withdrawal from Iraq but defends Trump's irresponsible withdrawals from Syria and Afghanistan needs to check their hypocrisy. Your reaction there?
Yeah, I think you're actually overstating Obama's anti-interventionism a little bit. He was the author of the surge in Afghanistan and put ground forces in Syria. But I agree with you on this. We need a definition of success or ISIS's defeat that mortals can achieve. Well, the national security experts that we're hearing so much from complaining about this have a standard of defeat for ISIS that's impossible to achieve. It's sort of like if anybody in Syria thinks nicely of ISIS or says anything in their favor, we have to stay in Syria forever. So I think we've achieved a reasonable standard of success against ISIS. They don't have any territory anymore. That's an important thing. They don't have the allure to attract people to come, idiots from around the world, to come fight for them. Their ranks are decimated. They've been mostly killed. So if that's not success, nothing is, and we're going to stay in Syria forever.
I want to play for you, just so our viewers remember, what Donald Trump said he was going to do and his general approach to foreign policy. Remember, he gave his big foreign policy speech, I think it was December a year ago, when he laid out his priorities, like principled realism. I'm going to play this and get your reaction. Let's watch.
Our leaders engaged in nation building abroad while they failed to build up and replenish our nation at home. They undercut and shortchanged our men and women in uniform with inadequate resources, unstable funding, and unclear missions.
All right, David, that's what the president basically campaigned on. Barack Obama said something similar, but I think, look, Ben's right. Realism on the ground in Afghanistan kicked in, couldn't pull everybody out, had a mini surge in Afghanistan, reluctantly deployed troops in Syria. He didn't want to do it at all. He had the red line. Trump smashed him back on the red line, chemical weapons used. But look, Donald Trump did respond to these chemical attacks. He got criticism from a lot of folks when he did, actually, on the non-interventionist right, but he did respond. It's not like Donald Trump has done nothing in Syria. So to hear all these Democrats today say, well, Donald Trump just had a herky-jerk foreign policy, I think it's been fairly consistent. We said when we get it done, we're gonna begin to draw down troops because we have a lot of stuff to do on the home front that has frankly not been done, not been paid for, and we've got to take care of business at home. I think he's just fulfilling his promise.
Well, let me say this. I think, and Ben might concede this point in what he wrote earlier today, what gets people worried is the lack of a national security decision-making process. I think President Trump made this decision talking to President Erdogan on the phone. So there's no strategy, communication, scenario planning that feels like it's in action. Number two, it's bigger than Syria. Just like Afghanistan, 9/11 was bigger than Afghanistan. What could this incubate? What are the ramifications for Israel, Iran? There are a lot of questions there. Listen, $3 trillion of spending on Iraq and Afghanistan is in some ways hard to defend from any perspective, from any party. So I think the issue is, what do these 2,000 troops represent into the potential of a reflash and the potential of a danger to the United States of America?
Ben, guys, there is always a potential for reflash. That's why going into these very difficult, tumultuous places with tribal factions, ISIS is a Sunni terror group, Hezbollah is Iranian-backed, then you get the Alawites with Bashar al-Assad, you got the Christian community that was protected by Assad and has been destroyed and brutalized and persecuted under ISIS and what's happened. So this is a complex web of relationships and detail. And I think, again, the idea that there's a great constituency, Ben, for a return to Bush-style interventionism where we establish these beachheads and never leave, I just don't think that American people are for it. And at some point, it's going to affect Democrats and Republicans really badly, because you're going to really get someone in the White House who really doesn't want to do any foreign policy of this nature at all, and that will hurt us.
It's a beltway consensus. I agree with you. The American people, I think, polls show, are not for endless occupational wars. It continues to stun me the extent to which people in this town look at the last 15 years of American foreign policy in the Middle East and say, that went well. I think we should have another occupational war using U.S. military forces to manage the sectarian civil war for an indefinite period in service of some management goal. It really continues to blow me away that that's the sort of default foreign policy thinking around here.
Oh, and there's been a lot of changes in thinking. There's some evolution. And look, I don't mind when people evolve in their thinking. I was very rah-rah in the war in Iraq. I love our troops. Went over there, did a show there for a week. But after a while, it became fairly obvious to me it was a huge mistake, and many others. Okay, so people evolve, they change. But Rachel Maddow, who I think, look, she does a good job over there at MSNBC, but it's kind of confusing where she's come down on this issue. Let's hear about what she said last night. Let's watch.
The way that U.S. troops are fighting ISIS in Syria is in partnership with the Kurds, in partnership with Kurdish fighters who are believed by the U.S. military to be the most effective anti-ISIS force on the ground. And if the U.S. is now going to leave, what you're hearing, what you just described, is essentially devastation for the Kurds.
But then in an interview she did for a book, Glenn Greenwald tweeted this out earlier, an excerpt from this book called Drift. She said, in part, we don't need a radical new vision of post-Cold War American power. We just need a small c conservative return to our constitutional roots, a course correction, advocating against this almost colonial approach to foreign policy. I think the left is really kind of caught in between, two different countervailing positions here, David, and I think it's hard to square the circle.
Well, I think that foreign policy needs to be driven from the center. We might even agree on that. You talked about at the beginning entangling alliances. I agree we're against that. It doesn't mean we're against all alliances. We can't take our allies and make them adversaries. And I'm not sure it's a great idea to take our autocrats and make them allies. I think, that's the challenge that we have today. I think this is too much of a dangerous world to be in it alone.
Wait a second. Yeah, okay, Dave, but we're dealing with China, right? China, we trade with China, we do technology transfers with China, we got a Marxist-Leninist regime. So all these people are like, oh, we can't deal with bad actors. We're dealing with bad actors morning, noon, and night with China. CEOs, Hollywood, the media, universities. So, I mean, we got a while to do that. Real quick, because we're out of time. SecDef, any picks? Ben, real quick.
I can't think of anyone who would take the job who I could recommend for it.
All right, David, anyone?
Bill Cohen. He's not going to take the job either, so that's not helpful.
Oh, okay. Well, mine is Jim Webb. All right, mine's Jim Webb.
Oh, yeah, that's good. I like that.
Or not. I think it'd be a great choice. Former
I agree.
Secretary of the Navy and former Assistant Secretary of Defense. Yeah, he's my pick. He would be phenomenal. All right, guys, thanks so much. And coming up, Raymond Arroyo and I settle one of the biggest Christmas disputes of all. Oh, yeah, we can debate Syria, but we're going to debate something that might, oh, I love the hat. Isn't that beautiful? Plus, more gross toys to buy kids this holiday season. Must we do this? That's next. It's Friday, and that means it's time for Oh, it's Friday Follies. Come on, be in a good mood. Vacation time, kind of, sort of. Well, maybe you're working, but... Well, tonight, how do you know that you're really watching a Christmas movie? Our traditional real versus fake tree debate and more popular toys you may not want under the tree. Throw them away now. Joining us now with all the details, Raymond Arroyo, Fox News contributor, New York Times bestselling author of the Will Wilder series. Raymond. This is wild, okay? There are all these familiar movies that show up on TV or streaming this time of year. And it's fun because they're kind of a family tradition. For me, it's a Wonderful Life, those types of movies. But there's now a debate over whether that Bruce Willis, the old film Die Hard, is a Christmas movie. Explain this to me, please.
Well, for years this has been going on, whether it's a Christmas movie or not. So 20th Century Fox put out this trailer to end the debate. Watch.
Get ready to jingle some bells and deck the halls with boughs of Bruce Willis in the greatest Christmas story ever told.
Laura, this really doesn't end the debate at all. I know they're trying, but remember what Bruce Willis said a few years ago.
Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. It's a Bruce Willis movie.
Then there was the poll, Laura. 62% of people said it's not a Christmas movie. Only 25% thought Die Hard was. And though I'm happy to have the debate, and we can do it on Twitter at Raymond Arroyo or at Ingraham Angle, I have my own Arroyo guide to Is It a Christmas Movie? Here's my checklist. Is it set during Christmas? And can the whole family watch it? Is it redemptive and uplifting? Now, based on that criteria, Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. Do you agree?
I love the movie. It brings me back. It was 80s, right? Was it late 80s? Am I getting it right? Is it late 80s or mid 80s?
Yeah, late 80s.
Yeah, it's like, it's like, who doesn't want to go back to the late 80s? So I love the movie, but it's not a Christmas movie at all. It's ridiculous because just because there's an ornament hanging on a tree in some scene in a movie doesn't mean it's a Christmas movie. But Raymond, you like Christmas Vacation, right? Is that one of your favorites?
I do.
Favorites of all time?
And we're going to go through a few movies here. Let's start with Home Alone, which is, by the way, written by John Hughes, who also wrote Christmas Vacation. Now, this is the classic of the boy taking on a pair of hapless criminals and protecting his home. This got a kind of reboot this year. Google premiered a new ad with Macaulay Culkin as a grown-up Kevin McAllister. Look.
Hey, Google, add aftershave to my shopping list. Hey, Google, remind me to clean these sheets later.
Okay, I'll remind you.
Too bad AC.
Someone's at the front door.
What do I owe you?
Looks like you paid online.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Okay, cool.
Okay, he looks exactly the same. He hasn't aged. He looks the same. It's weird. But I don't
really
like. I think it's creepy. The then and now. I think it's kind of creepy. But is it a Christmas movie?
Well, it absolutely is a Christmas movie. But you know, Laura, this would never work today because you've got all the gadgets, and you would just get on your accounts and social media and alert the police. Little Kevin had to take on the criminals, and it's redemptive because remember he wanted his family to go away because they kind of ignored him, treated him poorly. And after being alone at home, he figures out he really loves him, wants his family, and they come back together. So it's a perfect Christmas movie, as is Daddy's Home too.
Oh, yeah, no, I won't say, Raymond, whether any of my children have screamed, I wish I didn't even have it. Oh, no, it's like, in that time of year, everyone's at each other's throat. I'm like, okay, but I wouldn't wish that. Remember Home Alone. We've actually said that. Now, what's the next one?
Right.
Daddy's Home 2?
Daddy's Home 2. Mark Wahlberg, Will Ferrell, and John Lithgow and Mel Gibson, of course, stole the show. Watch.
We're back with more daddies.
Look who's here!
How's Uncle Joe?
Why does a duck have feathers?
Why?
To cover up his butt quack.
Hey, kids, I got a good one for you. Two dead hookers wash up on the shore.
Oh, no. Shut up. It's a little racy around the edges, but there's nothing a family can't watch here, and it's actually a lot of slapstick and a great deal of fun, and it's all about Mel Gibson. So yes, Christmas movie, Laura.
All right, finally, we have, we'll keep it rolling, guys. We have Christmas Vacation, one I mentioned earlier, the Chevy Chase holiday family disaster that seems to be, it's like on TV wall to wall this time of year. Is that a Christmas movie or not?
It was also written by John Hughes, absolutely a Christmas movie. It talks about the beauty of Christmas, no matter how imperfect it is. You watch poor Clark Griswold suffer like the rest of us, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great film. It's one of my favorites, though there is one racy scene, so fast forward past that.
All right, wait, what are we having now? We got a real versus fake? Finally, our real versus fake debate. I wait all year. I get all my anecdotes ready. I get it all ready for you.
Here we go. Now, Laura, your team this year put out an ad, okay? And this group was called the Christmas Tree Promotion Board. They aired a $1 million spot trying to get people to buy more real trees.
All those tree operations are pretty much family, multi-generational people that work hard to make that experience valuable to the customers.
It truly is a family of family businesses. It's Christmas. Keep it real.
Well, that's nice, Laura, but you know me. I like my fake tree.
I won't say whether or not there is an Ingraham tree farm somewhere in Massachusetts that is family related. So I'm a little biased here, and it's an awesome tree farm. But lay it on me. Why do the Arroyos, who are just such beautiful, earthy people, you love food and music in New Orleans, why the heck do you people prefer the fake trees? I don't get it. They're all made in China.
I'm going to tell you why. 80% of Americans agree with us. 80% of Americans buy artificial trees. Here's why. A study, 2011, a SUNY study, found that 50 types of mold spores were on that tree. They contain all kinds of varmints, snakes, rats, beetles embedded in the tree. They get in your home. And let me tell you, and for your family, Laura, with the dog running around, the shats that fall from the tree, those little dried needles, and that's all over the Ingraham house.
Shats.
I love those. Those shats fall. The dog can choke on it. It can puncture their intestine. You don't want a real tree in the house. And Ingraham, in your house, you don't water it enough so it looks like this.
Oh, no. Well, the good news is,
fake tree,
who
Laura.
needs a fireplace? Who needs a fireplace? Well, I have to
go. Warmth, at least on one night.
Okay, well, I will say this, that it is a bit annoying that it's always like, unplug the tree, come home. We have a couple of trees. So unplug the tree. We have one, I have to say, I have one fake tree in my house this year. I have 2 real ones and 1 fake one. I have given in, but I don't spend any time.
To the light, Laura.
No, I don't spend any time in front of the fake tree. No time. It's only in front of the real trees. But the shats,
you're a tree snob. Spray the pine scent. You don't know the difference, except you don't get fires.
All right, Raymond, thank you so much. Again, I win. Real always wins out over fake. Raymond Arroyo, Merry Christmas. All right, and coming up, another story which is unbelievable. You won't even believe this. 2 Marines were accosted by these left-wing Antifa thugs. We're going to speak exclusively to one of the men who was attacked, verbally assaulted. And why did this happen in the city of brotherly love? Don't go away. Throughout the year, this show has highlighted the disturbing spate of violence from the far-left activist group Antifa. From Portland to Berkeley to right here in Washington, D.C., they've stood against free expression and decent society, and that's putting it mildly. But this latest case might be the most disturbing of them all. A brutal attack on 2 Marines in Philadelphia. For more, we go to our own Trace Gallagher in our West Coast newsroom with a full story. Trace.
Laura, good evening. Marine reservists Alejandro Godinez and Luis Torres were punched, kicked, pepper sprayed, and robbed in the heart of Philly. It happened in November, just down the street from where the conservative We the People rally had taken place. The Marines say they came to Philly to attend an event and did not know anything about the conservative rally, which was attended by about 30 people and about 200 counter-protesters, including Antifa activists. Police say the rally itself was fairly calm, aside from a few scuffles and counter-protesters being arrested. But the attack on the Marines down the street was a whole different thing. After Philadelphia police released this video of the suspects, 33-year-old Thomas Keenan said